Committee meetings that we typically have. It's more of an informational type section. There's no voting on this tonight, but before we start with public comments, I would like to take a moment of silence for everyone to think about the McCarty family, that Supervisor McCarty that passed away suddenly over the weekend. So let us pray. Thank you. Today is January 27th, and I'd like to open up with public comments. And I have 3 people signed up. Derek Joyner. Yes, sir. That's fine, yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here today on behalf of Smithfield Recreation Association, as well as Smithfield Park. I know it's been a topic of conversation as to some debt that is still owed from Smithfield Recreation Association for the buy-in of the Luter Sports Complex for a total that was $300,000. Over the past 6 years, we've paid that down now to approximately, I think exactly $120,000 is left on the debt. I come to you today as kind of representative, as a coach, as a volunteer, as a citizen that grew up playing at Beal Park, as family members that helped found Beal Park and helped create it what it is. For the past 6 years, we've paid $180,000 at a $30,000 a year payment. Well, this year will be 6 years. And with the $120,000 left, the debt forgiveness that's been a topic of conversation helps us out a lot. As most of you know, we pay $25,000 a year to the town to use Luter Sports Complex, which we need. Beal Park and Luter Sports Complex keeps us afloat. There's no way we can have over 500 kids sign up for baseball and softball combined and not have both those parks to use. The things that we do back for the community, as far as obviously giving kids a place to play baseball and softball, we also do scholarship funds called Nick Staha Scholarship Funds. We give back money every year to kids that are less fortunate that still want to play sports. Actually, we're already set to do a $1,200 scholarship for 2 softball players and 3 baseball players this spring. We also have a lending locker that we do as far as giving back thousands of dollars worth of used equipment for baseball and softball that we give back to kids that are less fortunate that still want to play but can't go afford a new $300 bat or $120 glove or $75 helmet or whatever the case may be. So kind of coming to you guys, if you had any questions for me, also to once again kind of vouch for that, that topic going forward as a big deal to Smithfield Recreation Association. That's a nonprofit 501c3, to be able to get rid of that $120,000 debt that we still have left to owe to the town. The $30,000 a year that we pay for that, as you guys know, most 501c3s, we're not out there to make money. So we count the pennies on our budget every year. That $30,000 that we paid the town as the agreed upon amount prior to me being on the board would obviously go a long way for Beal Park improvements, continued scholarships, continued lending locker ideas, as well as giving back to the community for the kids and the youth. So,
Does anyone have any questions for Derek at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Derek. Do you receive any money directly from the town to support SRA?
No, sir. No, sir. So we pay the $25,000 per year for Luter use, and then we pay the $30,000 back as part of the payment agreement to the town for the $300,000 original buy-in amount, I believe 6 years ago. So nothing comes back to us from the town.
So all of the equipment and field maintenance and all of those things are actually the responsibility of SRA?
At Beal Park. At Luter.
No, at Beal.
At Beal, correct. Yes, sir. At Luter's a different story, obviously, but at Beal, the improvements that we've done alone this year at Beal, I don't know if you guys know Jared Olsch. He's an asset to us at Beal Park, and he has actually calculated approximately $55,000 in donations that he's had for fencing, a new gazebo area, picnic area, fences, batting cages, field dirt, tractor use. We've had people that are members of our organization donate their skid steers to come out there and do all kinds of work. So Beal Park is 100% volunteer ran, as well as funded from ourselves.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Y'all actually still have, because I remember those cold February, March days, as far as work days are concerned.
Yes.
Y'all still have a significant turnout of parents that show up to do the significant amount of maintenance that you need to have to start the season, and then obviously every time the field's marked and dragged and everything, that's all volunteer as well, correct?
Absolutely. So we do a not Save Beal Park, I'm sorry, a Beal Park work day before every spring and fall season. As many as possible, members come out, field maintenance, new edges, base plugs, paint, roofing, bleachers, dugout. I mean, you name it, it has to get done every year. And that's all from the volunteer body.
And one further follow-up, if I could. You've also been involved in attempting to obtain what I would call a scholarship or a donation from Tidewater Tides or Norfolk Tides at one time, where they came in and picked certain ballparks around the area, and this was eligible for one, and some money was donated. So y'all are trying to scrap every way you possibly can to.
Yes, sir. The Norfolk Tides, we qualified for the field improvement plan that so basically they pick one field every year in the local 757 area. I think we did ours like maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and it actually was one of the fields at Beal Park that was improved by the Norfolk Tides. And basically what they do is they bring in some of their leftover dirt, they bring in some of their field crew, spruce it up, clean up the edges, and kind of just make it a better ball field.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question, Mike.
Yes.
Derek, you talked about the indebtedness that SRA owes the town and your lease agreement. So it's $30,000 annually toward the promissory note and $25,000 for your lease agreement for the ball fields.
At Luter, correct? Yes, ma'am.
The $300,000 that was originally agreed upon between SRA and the town of Smithfield, exactly what was that for? Yeah, I heard you say buy-in to the ball fields. What privileges does that give you?
So keep in mind, some of that stuff was before my time on the board, so I wasn't a part of that decision. But to my knowledge, what's been told to me is that $300,000 of the promissory note from the town that Smithfield Rec has to pay back was to satisfy the agreement amount of Smithfield Recreation Association to have first right of refusal to use the agreed upon fields at Luter Sports Complex. The $300,000 was taken out against Beal Park until it was paid off as part of whatever that board decided at that time. We've comprised a subcommittee of Save Beal Park Committee, which I'm sure you guys have heard. They've done golf tournaments, all kinds of volunteer organizations to pay back the $180,000 that has been repaid over the past approaching 6 years.
I got a question, Michael. With the agreement that we have with SRA in relationship to the $300,000, would that be considered a public-private partnership?
It was, I mean, you could in theory construe it to be that. It was a joint venture between the private entity and the town to help fund that facility.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Any more questions for Derek? Appreciate you coming up today.
Thank you guys for your
Thank
time.
you so much. Next, we have Lee Abbott Lehman.
Hey, good afternoon. After the last town council meeting where I spoke, I was approached by someone in the hallway who felt that I had been speaking unfairly or without data for some of the information that I discussed. And I wanted to just follow up to that since this is on public record, and reiterate that I was speaking with data-driven information. Also, I touched upon, and Bill, I know you and I had kind of a sidebar comment during the meeting or side chat about some of the housing issues in town, the distribution of housing. So as I know that the Grange is on the proposal, or is on the discussion today, and there are a few other higher density units that have come before Planning Commission or before the town. I wanted to reference a few things that are just kind of eye-poppingly disjointed numbers in my opinion, and I'll let the numbers speak for themselves. There are, and this information, this aggregated information is from 2022 and 2023. It's drawn from the U.S. Bureau of the Census, the U.S. Department of Education, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and the Federal Housing Finance Agency. There are 3,418 houses or apartments within the town area. 77.4% of these are single-family homes. The really interesting percentages to me were that as much as we talk about open development in this town and how this town is exploding and the county is exploding, 55.9% of those are actually built from 1970 to 1999. The last 25 years was a significantly slower growth period than those years. I think there's a perception because of all of these developments that are getting put forth before the Council and Planning Commission that all of these buildings are going to come tomorrow or within a year or two, which is clearly, I mean, if anybody's ever even tried to renovate a house, you know, that's not going to happen. But I think some of these timelines and some of these numbers get really conflated. What I mentioned was a little eye-popping to me, and I think this represents a real challenge that we have as a town and as a county, is that of the owner-occupied homes, only 122 are 2 bedrooms or less. 2-bedroom being the ideal starter size, it being a very common condo size. Where I think the correlation to this as a troubling point is that, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term the ALICE guidelines that were put forth, the United Way uses them pretty routinely. It's a term that they coined for asset limited, income constrained, and employed. These are people that are in the donut. They're above people who will get any housing subsidy. They're above any public assistance option. They are very often they're actually public employees who are required to live close to their areas of employment, or hospital workers, or some teachers, law enforcement. They sadly fall often in these guidelines. And in Isle of Wight County, 36% of our residents are at the ALICE level or below. Where I'm going with these numbers is I think that it really demonstrates that if we have 36% of our people who are here now, not all the incomers that everybody talks about and fears, 36% that are here now that are asset limited, that can't afford housing security because of the size of some of the houses and the size of the mortgages and the prices, isn't it time that we actually do consider some more affordable and smaller housing options, more relevant to the housing needs of our area? I'm not nuts about all the traffic that'll get thrown down Gray Street and Thomas. I hate it now. My feeling is it's going to happen whether the Grange happens or not. The traffic's going to keep coming. That's a separate problem. Maybe it can be mitigated with development, but I think we fundamentally have a housing distribution problem. I mentioned the age distribution the last time, but when we are in a situation where we have that percentage of people that are asset limited and housing insecure, and not even 25% of our housing population to serve them and people who are already considered secure. I ask you to really consider long and hard the math when we're saying no growth, no high density. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Eric Lehman.
On a different vein, when I saw the Grange was going to be on the agenda, I think, and talking to other people who I play golf with and around town, a lot of people are just wondering what's been taking so long to break the ground on the Grange. I spoke before town council on it, and we had a years-long debate over the Grange, whether it was good or bad. But I think the majority of people in the end saw that it was good, since it would be a revitalization of a very underutilized area that we constantly see coming in town. And it would really introduce kind of what Lee was talking to, a blend of residential, commercial, and also community spaces that would make Smithfield even more attractive to residents and increase our tourism base, which is an important part of what this town is built on, bringing people in to see our historic district. With the farmers market's need for ongoing and permanent home, and frankly, Smithfield Food and Riverside Hospital's stated need to provide a broad range of housing for their growing employee base and very age-diverse employee base, it seems that something like the Grange, or getting started with the Grange, would be sooner than better. Because I'm 78, and I'd like to see it started before I'm 80, to tell you the truth, because I think it brings a lot to the town. Simply stated, like many other people here, the Grange should proceed. It was voted on and agreed on by the prior council, and a lot of us who had thoughts and good and bad for it stood before the council. It was voted on and should proceed. I personally hope that town politics or inflexibility on the part of either the town or the developers would cause this not to move forward, because I think in the broad scope of looking at this town, it is what's needed at that corner there. And I would be very afraid if we don't do something there, what a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, something else would pop up there. And that's not what we need coming in the front door of historic Smithfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else like to speak? If you have not signed up, feel free to raise your hand and come on up. Hearing nothing, we'll continue with our public safety. Mr. Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Safety Committee is comprised of myself as chair, Councilman Harris, and Councilman Biebermeyer. First on the agenda, and the only thing I have on the agenda is operational update from Chief Howell. Chief Howell, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In the form of operational updates, you all have our activity report concluding for the month of December, concluding the year. I'd be happy to answer any questions concerning that report. The only update that I would have is as it relates to Jersey Park Apartments. The last shooting that we had in December, we have identified a person of interest. We have outstanding arrest warrants for that person. However, that person cannot be found. We have not been able to find him thus far. That person is not charged with the actual shooting, but we do believe that with continued investigations, we will be able to identify that suspect or person of interest as a person responsible for that shooting and obtain additional charges for that shooting. So that is an ongoing investigation, but there are outstanding arrest warrants for that individual, not for the shooting, but for similar charges. And in the additional form of operational updates with our staffing, we currently have 2 vacancies. Well, 1 vacancy. 1 officer is looking to leave the first part of February, going back to his previous employer, and that at that point we will have 3 vacancies. One of the vacancies is the position that we were not able to fill due to find good qualified applicants. However, I do have approximately 5 applications on my desk as we speak of people to be interviewed for some of those vacancies. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions concerning what I've presented thus far.
Any questions for the chief by members of council? You know, I'll make one comment as far as vacancies are concerned. I know it's coming up from time to time, and there are some significant detrimental aspects to losing police officers, to outfitted police officers. An expensive proposition. Of course, one size does not fit all as far as the clothing is concerned and things like that. But I know from experience that police officers, by very nature, some stay their entire career, some move around for different reasons, and it can be anywhere from family aspects to monetary aspects to other stuff. One of the things that allows police officers to move around is the retirement system, which is very portable. You can go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and never lose any of your retirement seniority. So that makes it a little bit easier for the police officer to choose where he wants to go and what he wants to do. We do the very best, and I know the chief does, to keep folks here, but at the same time, they are of their own mindset and do whatever they want. So just because we have one or two vacancies every once in a while, I don't think it reflects on what a wonderful town we have and the police department that we have. So I just wanted to throw that as a little bit from both a councilmanic perspective and also somebody that managed police officers for going on 30 years. So it happens, the way it goes, and I don't think it should reflect negatively on our police department. That's all I have. Any further questions for the chief by members of council?
Yes, I have a
Mr.
question.
Chudler?
Chief Howell.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you saw, I asked a question of the company that's renovating the Jersey Park apartments about their security. Did they consult with you at all or with the Smithfield PD about their planned security enhancements?
We have heard of some of the things that they have planned to do, but to have a sit-down conversation, no. The only correspondence that occurred thus far has been electronic, what I've been able to read of what they plan to do.
Yeah, it is where we did a security assessment of the facility with the current owner, and I know that the new owners have a copy of that assessment, so they know what deficiencies we identified previously. We had some interactions one-on-one with the previous owner, that this new owner was actually part of those conversations. So they know what some of the deficiencies are, and they have indicated that they plan to address those, but we haven't gone into detail into that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions?
I'd like to make an observation to that in reference to what Michael and Alonzo said. I do know, too, Darren, that the security measures that the new company looks to institute are above the existing security that they currently have at Jersey Park Apartments.
Yes, ma'am. I was pleased with the response of the renovator. I was just curious if they had came up with those solutions as a reference to the deficiencies identified by the Smithfield PD, because I would wager that the police department's more familiar with what solutions would benefit the community than a developer out of.
And that's
Maryland.
true. And I know that our police department has been in regular contact with the existing owners or property managers, and that's an ongoing issue of trying to resolve what the current issues are out there. And as Michael said, that they have a copy of that report.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions?
I have a comment.
Mr. Mayor?
I know Alonzo has faced this problem with officers for some time, and at one time he was down 5, and then he was down to only 1, and now he's back to 2, maybe 3, but it's been a yo-yo process for him, and he's really, in my opinion, has really stepped up and tried to stay ahead of that, and it's been difficult. It's not just us, it's many other police officers and localities are having the same time. Some of these numbers I hear are staggering about how far they're down, and I think he's done a good job, and I just want to praise him for that at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further questions by members of the council? If not, that will end the public safety meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And next we have water and sewer. Mr. Cullen?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your appointment to Chair of Water and Sewer. I don't have anything to present from previously, but we do have water and sewer rate study presentation to be provided.
And while we're setting that up, just as a little background, we've been working with TRC, which was Draper Aiden when we were originally working with them. We've been working with them for probably well over a year now on this water and sewer rate study. So they have evaluated our current rates, our current infrastructure, evaluated our budget, our capital needs, and that's what they have based this report off of. We looked at use fees, we looked at connection fees, availability fees, I mean, everything that was part of our current rate structure. So they have literally gone through and looked at all of it and based it off of our current and future needs as well. Come up while we...
There we go.
This is
The council can see your presentation, it's on that side.
okay.
And they have a copy of your report.
Okay.
If you can store it or something.
Batteries okay in that Mark?
It's a new projector, so we're figuring out exactly where you're going to do that.
Where's Amy?
Vacation. There we go.
Where's Leslie?
Vacation.
Nadia can handle it.
Oh, yeah,
See?
There we go.
there we go. Okay,
Okay, good.
I think
Good
we're ready
afternoon.
now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So as Michael mentioned, we've been working for about a year on, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. If I wander away from the microphone, just direct me back. We have been working on the rate study for about a year, looking at the budget and your main components of rates. I'm going to push this button and hope it's the right one.
That's the, you just, when you're ready, tell him and he'll switch it for you.
Thank you. We looked at various components of your rate structure with the goal of suggesting rates and fees that would make this water and sewer funds operate as an enterprise fund. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what an enterprise fund is first. But before I talk about that, I don't know how familiar any of you are with water and sewer operations, the revenues, the budget, etc. So I'm going to do a little bit of a high-level presentation. You can stop me at any point and say you want more information. So feel free to do that. So, of course, the concept of an enterprise fund is that when local governments run water, sewer systems, maybe a stormwater system, those enterprise funds are considered business-type activities, and the goal of these enterprise funds is to gather enough revenue from the users of the water or sewer system to pay all the expenses of the water and sewer system. And that's more than paying your annual operating costs, salaries, health insurance, chemicals, electricity, et cetera. You also need to think about your CIP, any debt service, and also what the future might hold for your capital expenses or for debt service. So everything that we looked at in context with this rate study relies on this concept of an enterprise fund. So I'm going to start with water rates. Your water rates are currently composed of two fees. Your users of the water system pay $7 per 1,000 gallons of water that goes through their water meter. And then in addition to that, they pay a debt service fee. It's $11.47. That's applied to every bi-monthly billing period. So this little table over to the left shows those rates, and then also what the bi-monthly charge is for a customer using 6,000, 8,000, or 10,000 gallons of water. We looked at your billing records for about a year just to get a sense of where most of your customers are, and most customers fall between that range of 6,000 to 10,000 gallons of water usage. So that's why we're kind of using these numbers as benchmark numbers. So the first thing that we did is we sat down and we did a projection. We wanted to look forward about 5 years, and we took the budget for this year that we're currently in, FY25, and said, okay, so let's look forward and see what is likely to change and how should we adjust expenditures, and also therefore what kind of revenues will we need going forward to pay the expenses of the water system. We also looked at the developments that have been approved in town or and around town, and looked back at how many new connections have been coming onto the system routinely on an annual basis. And we're assuming that as far as growth goes, you're getting 73 new typical residential connections per year. So we do assume a little bit of growth in revenue just based on new connections. So for most of the categories in your budget, we applied a 3 to 5% increase over the 4 or 5 year projection period. The biggest area where we needed to apply greater increases was in the part of the budget that addresses the RO plant. And there were a few categories in there. The biggest was that, the RO plant discharges water to the wastewater system, and you pay a bill to HRSD for that sewer usage. And HRSD's fees for sewer are anticipated to increase about 5.5% in FY26, this upcoming fiscal year, 9.9% the year after that, and then 5 or 5.5% in subsequent years. Chemical charges are also a place where water utilities are seeing pretty dramatic increases in cost. So we apply 10% to your chemical costs going forward. One thing that's pretty important about these two numbers is not only did we apply large increases or larger increases to those numbers, those are also really some of the biggest numbers in your budget that we are increasing by larger percentages. Certainly they're the largest increases in the RO section of the budget. Now, when we did a 5-year projection, the budget kind of goes up and down a little bit. Primarily, the HRSD increases kind of affect that. But without any rate increases, your annual deficits over this 5-year period in different years are anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 a year. So the rate increases that we'll talk about the goal is to cover that deficit with rates. So let's talk about the debt fee first. That's a little bit of an easy one to talk about. So I mentioned that the bi-monthly debt fee is $11.47, applied to every customer's bill, large or small, big user, small user. The fee was established to pay the debt service on the RO plant, and there's another water project, I think it's a water tank, that debt service fee is meant to cover. So each year, based on this $11.47, the town collects about $233,000. And the debt service on the outstanding debt, it varies from year to year, but over the next few years, it's $200,000 to $330,000 per year. So what you can see is that debt service fee comes very close to meeting the actual debt service that you are paying on an annual basis. Now, these fees, I'm oversimplifying, but the fees come in, they go to a fund that's called the debt service fund, and then the debt service is paid out of that. Now, there's already a balance in that fund, so in fact, there's about $960,000 in that fund. So each year, some money goes in, some money comes out, and the balance goes up and down a bit. But at the end of this period, FY '29, there's still about $1 million in that fund. So we talked about what should we do with this. And our biggest thought was, let's just keep it in place right now, because there was some concern amongst the personnel managers that there may be some additional debt service in the nearish future that's not included in current CIP. If there are large projects, we don't want to lower the debt service fund just to turn around and increase it again. So the recommendation of this study is just leave the debt service fee as it is. I think it's been in place for close to 20 years or something like that. And just reevaluate it as the CIP is developed and as staff has a better sense of what the next few years will look like. So this is what the recommended water rates look like. I told you we looked at the operating cost, and we are recommending an increase to the rate. If you look across the top of that table, you'll see that in FY24 it was $6.75. Now that's per 1,000 gallons. You did a 25-cent increase for the fiscal year that we're in, taking it to $7. And then to set a rate that balances the budget and just calls for moderate increases in the years going forward, the rate for FY26 would have to go to $8.50. You can see that the debt service fee remains the same. And then that kind of middle section of the table shows you what the bi-monthly water bill would look like for a customer who uses 6,000, 8,000, or 10,000 gallons over a 2-month period. And so let's pick 8,000 gallons. That's kind of in the middle. In the year that we're in, that customer who uses 8,000 gallons would have seen a $2 increase on their monthly water bill. This rate would give them a $12 increase in FY26 and then $2 to $4 each year going forward.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the previous screen.
Do you mind going back, Eric?
Well, no, the question where you showed us the percentages in fiscal year 2026, I think it was 9.9%.
For the HRSD portion of the wastewater charge.
Why is there such a large jump? Do we know that that's going to happen?
Well, we don't know. There is a study that you can look at on HRSD's website where they projected their rate increases going forward, and so that's where those numbers came from. Now, I don't think that HRSD adopts a series of rates over a series of years. They do it 1 year at a time, but having a study that had some very defined numbers made me feel like we should use them as opposed to ignore them, particularly since the 9.9 was a large number.
And I will say HRSD has been pretty routinely adopting what's in that plan. They have not veered from it. So the rates that are called for in their rate studies, they have pretty routinely stuck to them. So we can fairly reliably expect that we're going to see that increase.
Okay.
And Michael, they establish that rate once per year?
Yes, sir. They do it every year when they adopt their annual budget. And as she mentioned, that's all of the discharge that comes out of our RO plant goes to HRSD and has to be treated. We are looking at some alternatives, if there's some ways we can do some additional treatment and maybe discharge it into the creek. If, again, all the things would have to test in a way that would allow that to happen environmentally. But we're spending $250,000 a year in HRSD fees.
Well, if I may, along that same line, are you familiar with any advances in technology that would allow the potential or the possibility for us to discharge into the creek? I'm somewhat familiar with my former job as far as the shrimp dying and the fish dying and things like that, as far as those tests are concerned. Are you familiar with any advances that are?
I'm not, because I do more of the financial work, and I'm not a technical or engineer person. So Michael or some of the staff have to answer that.
We have one of our other consulting firms looking at that, and there is a process that is currently being used in the Netherlands that we are evaluating, nowhere in the United States has used it, but we are evaluating whether it's financially feasible to try to implement that here and what the offset would be, how many years we would have to, cover that before it paid for itself. So we are looking at what alternatives are out there. But as far as I know, as of now, there's not one that's been done successfully in the United States.
And the ones that we have been using here that we have tried, that we have tested, have made no improvements as far as the efficacy is concerned?
No, sir. This one out of the Netherlands is the one that shows the most promise so far.
Okay.
And I would also say whatever those solutions might be are not included in any of these projections. If there's CIP, if there's increase or decrease in some portion of the operating costs, we don't know enough to have addressed that yet.
Right.
So we can move forward, at least one, maybe two slides, I think. Okay, so now what this slide shows you is we took a look at, I showed you how rates would change over time. This is just a projection of this year's rate compared to the recommended rate. And it shows for a broader range of customers using from 4,000 up to 20,000 gallons over a bi-monthly period. The current rate, the proposed rate, and then that middle section of the table shows you what the water charge in these other localities would be for the same amount of usage. And so those are just a lot of numbers, and I thought one easy way to compare that would be to say, okay, so across these nearby communities, what is the average rate? And you see that under that orange bar, where it shows the average rate across all the other utilities that we consider comparable utilities in one way or the other. And then I said, okay, so what is your rate compared to the average rate? Currently, your rates, I think, look really good compared to the average rate amongst these other utilities because you're only in the 60 to 70% of their rates. And if the proposed rates were to be increased, of course, you're a greater percentage, but you're still 80 to 86% or the highest. So a rough way of saying these proposed rates, while the rate per 1,000 gallons is a large increase, compares fairly favorably with the neighboring utilities. Do you all have questions about this slide? It has a lot of numbers on it, and I don't know how quickly you could absorb them. So should I move on? Let's go to the next slide, Eric. Okay, let's talk about sewer rates. So your bi-monthly sewer rates are composed of three different fees. The first is the charge per 1,000 gallons based on the customer's water usage. That's currently $3.99 per 1,000 gallons. And I think that increased 25 cents this year over the previous fiscal year. You have a compliance fee, much like that debt service fee I talked about before. It's $18.62. Every customer pays it regardless of whether they use a little water or a lot of water, and it's $18.62 per bi-monthly billing period. Now, the third component, which is the component that you have no control over, is HRSD's charge, which is, if you look at their website, you'll see $8.28 per 100 cubic feet. And what that correlates to in thousands of gallons is it's $11.07 per 1,000 gallons. So those are the three rates, and you can see below what the bi-monthly bill is, again, for your typical customers, 6,000, 8,000, and 10,000 gallons. So that's what FY25 looks like. Eric, do you want to go to the next one? Okay, so we did a 5-year projection of your sewer budget also. Again, we assumed you get about 73 residential connections per year, so that increases your annual revenue by that number of customers. We applied pretty moderate rate increases across all the categories. And without rate increases over this projection period, the deficits would be $300,000 to $400,000 per year. So that's the deficit we're trying to cover by increasing the rate.
Ma'am, that number, the 300 to 400,000, is that taking into account the 73 additional new homes, or is that without that included?
We're including revenue. I think we used 8,000 gallons of usage per month that those 73 customers would use and be billed for. So their revenue is included.
So even with those 73 new homes, we still have a deficit of 3
Yeah.
to 400,000?
And the 73, I don't remember the exact number. You know, they move the needle a bit. That doesn't make a huge difference.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the sewer compliance fee was put into place under the regional sewer consent order, and that money, as it's paid in by your customers, also goes to its own fund. I think it's called the Sewer Compliance Fund. And out of that fund, you pay for the projects that are required under the consent order, which is primarily to keep extraneous water out of the system, to keep the sewer system tight so you're not sending additional water, rainwater, groundwater, to the wastewater treatment plant and through the pump stations. So each year, at this fee of $18.62, you're collecting about $410,000 with your existing customers. That creeps up a little bit too as we add these 73 customers on, but again, it doesn't move the needle that much. Each year, it's just a small increase. So right now, the balance in that fund's about $3.9 million. The CIP includes a variety of projects that total $300,000 or $400,000 each of the years going forward. When we talked about these projects in our internal meetings, the staff's sense was that they need to be doing more than they are, and the CIP may need a bit of beefing up. And, you know, there's a little bit of analysis that will need to go into that. You know, what are the most important projects? How much will they cost? And then also, how much can the town manage on any given year? So I don't know what those numbers are going to look like, but in our internal groups, we talked about probably increasing that CIP over the next few years to address some of these problems that are known within the system. But based on just spending $300,000 or $400,000 per year, at the end of this time frame, there's about $4.2 million in the fund. So in simple terms, you're putting a tiny bit more in than you're taking out. So it's kind of holding steady. But based on our internal meetings, the recommendation is really to leave the fee as it is now, but spend some time over the next few years reviewing what should be added to the CIP, what can reasonably be accomplished, and then look at that again in a few years.
I have a question about that. Michael, do you know what is on the CIP currently?
It's a
For
variety
that.
of projects. I have to
Okay.
pull the CIP to tell you, for example, but the biggest ones for this is a lot of our manhole rehabs, pipelinings, things like that try to prevent leaks into the system. That's the bulk of what we've been doing with the compliance fund, but we can probably do some bigger rehab projects now that we know we've got more solvency there.
And really, this review of taking a look at how that fund might fluctuate over time and how much more you can comfortably add to it is a pretty simple review that can be taken on internally. Do you want to go to the next slide, please? So this is what the recommended sewer rates would look like. At the top, you see that rate that was $3.74. This year, it's $3.99. It's recommended that that increase to $6 per year. And once that increases, our projections show that you may not need to increase it again over the next few years. So it's basically a $2 bump, but nothing after that. Now, of course, your customers are impacted as HRSD's rates increase. So the increases that I mentioned a few minutes before, I've included here because it's part of what your customers will pay, even though you don't have any influence over it. And then there's the compliance fee, which we're recommending stays at $18.62. So you can see for the customer, let's go to 8,000 gallons again. Their current bill's $139 over a 2-month period. That would go up to $163 and change, and then increase each year after that But it is important to realize that the increases are not because of town actions, but because of proposed or projected HRSD increases that will affect your customers. So what you'll see on that bottom group of numbers is that in the first year, FY26, your average customer's bills will increase somewhere between $18 and $30, depending on how much water they use, and then therefore their sewer bill, and more moderate increases in subsequent years.
A question.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what kind of surplus HRSD is maintaining at the present time as far
I
as their
don't.
operational?
I haven't studied their
Because,
budget
well,
carefully.
It would appear to me that if we are at the whim of their decision, of course, I realize that HRSD is composed of a number of representatives from around here or whatever, but I think that should be a significant component in the decision-making process as to how much surplus they're maintaining. If we're going to be providing significant funds as the years go by to make sure that they're comfortable and nice and warm and happy in their environment, I think we should know exactly what type of mindset and what they're looking at and what their CIPs and what other things. I mean, I think that's a significant part of the recipe for desirability. I'm not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, but looking at this, I think that would be something to be involved in discovery.
I agree, and it's way beyond the scope of what we can discuss today. There is a pretty good rate study on their website that is, 100 times more complex than this, maybe 1,000 times more complex than this. But, it's probably worth perusing just to, expand knowledge of that.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. So, Eric, if you'll go to the next slide. All right, so this slide also shows what your current and projected sewer rates for a wide range, 4,000 to 20,000 gallons over a billing period, look like now, what they would look like with the proposed increases, and then a comparison to those same 5 localities. And again, I did a little math just to say, so how do you look compared to all these other utilities? And your rates are a little bit more than the average of those utilities and remain, and for all of the range of usage. And then if you increase rates as recommended, that percentage higher increases even more. But then I did one more calculation, which is on the next slide. And you probably noticed that on that slide we included Franklin and Southampton County because they're in your neighborhood, but they are not HRSD customers. So in some ways they're a little different because they're not having that increase that HRSD, they may be having increases of their own because I didn't study their systems, but when you compare yourself just to these other communities that are also HRSD customers like you are currently just a hair below where they are. So those are your neighbors, somewhat comparable, and even if you increase rates as projected, you're still, after you get past 8,000 gallons, just a hair below the others. So those increases, while the rate per 1,000 gallons is a fairly large increase, it kind of keeps you in keeping with your neighbors, which is, I think, is important to at least think about. Questions, anybody? Okay, next slide. All right, this next group of fees are the connection fees, the pro rata fees, and the availability fees. So we'll talk about connection fees first. So the connection fees on the next slide are the fees that new construction, that would be a developer, large or small, who is building a new structure, pays to the town related to the physical connection being made to that building. So For a residential customer, that's or for a house, that's $660. And then as you can see over to the left, for the table on the left is the commercial connections. If it's a small meter, it's also $660, and then it increases by meter size. Based on the man hours and the effort required for the town to deal with these new connections, the existing fees seem adequate, and so the recommendation is not to increase that fee at this time. So let's go to the next slide. The sewer connection fees are very similar. The residential connection fees, $1,580. The commercial connections, which again are based on the size of the water meter, are shown over to the left, and we're not recommending an increase to those fees at this time. I'll pause for questions if you all have questions about that. Okay.
Are those fees what make up that revenue from the 73 homes that you analyzed?
No, every one of those homes will pay the $660 and the $1,580. And these are really operating revenues. They come into the operating part of the budget, and then they are used to offset the cost of your staff, et cetera, who were involved with the connection process. So yes, we have included a little revenue each year. The $660 plus $1,580 times 73 is included in each budget going forward.
Thank you.
So let's go on to the next part is the availability fees. So availability fees are also fees that are charged to new construction. And the point of these fees is they're contributions to capital to help you fund your system capacity. And typically, this is how Smithfield is currently set up, and most communities have adopted a similar procedure. There's a smaller fee for a 5/8" meter, and it increases depending on for the larger meters. Now, currently, your fee, and if you look at your utility ordinance, you will see this. It's really composed of two pieces. There's the availability fee and the pro rata fee. And this is a little bit of a hangover from previous days. About, I honestly think it was close to 20 years ago, Draper Aden looked at availability fees, and we went through a calculation about what the water and sewer availability fees should be. And then the town was making and concerned about making improvements to the system prior to the subdivisions being developed. And so they kind of split the fee and said, let's take some of it early and then let's take some closer to the time of connection. That practice has changed over time. So the recommendation now is just to combine those two fees. The town, in fact, collects those two fees at the same time. They just have two different names. So going forward on this presentation, you'll see that they're combined. So in order to calculate what these fees should be, you really take a look at the capacity of the system, and I'll show you how we looked at that on the water system on the next slide. Oh no, this is what your existing fees look like. So this is water. There's an availability fee. As you can see, it is larger for each larger meter. There's a pro rata fee of $1,200 regardless of the meter size. So the total fee is what you see in the right-hand column. So we wanted to look at these fees and say, well, are these adequate based on today's system? So if you want to go to the next slide. We did a little calculation where we calculated the present value of the water system and how much capacity the system has, and that column that says permitted capacity is based on your groundwater withdrawal permit. And then we used a number of 400 gallons per day per equivalent residential connection, which is basically a home, and calculated, okay, so what should the availability fee be for that smallest meter for 5/8 inch? And the number comes up to $4,215, which is a very small increase over today's rate. Now, one thing when you're thinking about these fees that you typically take into consideration is, what does the CIP for improving the system look like over the next 5 years? And as I said, the CIP isn't huge. I think it's $2.5 million over that 4 or 5 year period. And so we added that in to say, you know, most communities don't increase these fees very often, so you should capture the value of that investment when you set this fee. So that bumps that fee up to $4,900 over today's fee, which is $3,920. So it's an increase of $980. And again, that fee is the fee that new construction pays. And it's really for them, they're paying for their capacity that they're using in the system based on how much money you've already invested in the system. So what happens to those fees as they come in? If you'll go to the next slide. This is what the recommended fees look like. Your connection fee, which is not changing, the pro rata fees based on meter sizes, and then a total in the final column. And really, in Smithfield, there are very few meters, I think, over the 1 or 1.5. You don't get many 4 and 6 inch meters. That's a pretty significant water user. So on the next slide, it's really hard to compare connection and availability fees to neighbors because basically everyone does it differently. But this is a comparison of your current connection fee plus availability fee and a total. The proposed, you can see the increase is about $1,000. And I gathered what I could about Chesapeake, Isle of Wight, Suffolk, Southampton, and Franklin. And if you look at the proposed fee of $5,560, it's not out of line with what's charged in neighboring communities. And I mean, what's really important is what your cost is, not what they're doing, but it's in, people like to know what the other communities are doing. So on the next slide, so when you collect these fees from new development, what happens to them? They go into a reserve fund. There's a water reserve fund and a sewer reserve fund. The fees go in, I'm simplifying, you pay capital projects out of that fund, and then you have a balance. So what you see here is currently there's about $1.2 million in the fund. Each year in this table, we add any new fees, and you can see under the columns that are labeled FY 26, 27, and 28, there's $357,700. That's based on the smallest meter for these 73 homes, plus their connection fee. And then this is your existing CIP, your capital plan. And so each year, I subtract out what you anticipate spending on the CIP, and then you can see what the balance is. Now, you have some fairly large projects in there toward the end, and that balance really starts to dwindle a bit. It goes from over $1 million to about to less than $600,000 at the end of this projected period.
Is there a state-required minimum value?
And again, this is something that probably you want to look at kind of on a rolling balance. You know, every year you might get the 73, you might get more, you might get fewer connections. Your projects may be delayed, they may be more, they may be less. So, you know, you can kind of do each year as you develop your CIP, just kind of eyeball this and see what that looks like going forward. So that's the water fund. Let's move on to sewer on the next slide. So this is what your current sewer fees look like. There's an availability fee, that's that first column. The pro rata fee, again, $1,200, and the total. So we did an analysis of your current fees and really how they compare to the investment in the system. And our thought was there's really no need to change these sewer fees at this time. The only thing that we did is we rounded them up. They're kind of ragged with, $20 at the end of most of them. We rounded those up to like nicer round numbers. So it's a little bit easier for staff to manage these numbers. So I think on the next page, so this shows you your current connection fee, those availability fees that have been rounded up a little bit. Again, that includes the current pro rata fee and then the total for each meter size based on the water meter. So I think the next slide shows how these compare to some of your neighbors. So you can see your current fee, the proposed fee, compared to the city of Chesapeake, Isle of Wight, Suffolk, and Southampton and Franklin. And again, while your fees are higher than some, they're not the highest. And frankly, they're not, they don't, to me, are not, really out of line compared to neighbors. So are there questions or anything we should discuss here? So again, on the sewer side, there's a little analysis on the next slide about what happens to this reserve fund over time. And now you have just under $2 million in that fund. Every year, about $388,000 would go in based on those 70-some connections. And this is the existing CIP that would be taken out of that fund. And as you can see, at the end of this period, the balance is about $3.3 million. And again, this is something you probably, just do almost a quick and dirty little analysis every year as you're preparing the CIP to just say, how's the money flowing in? How are our projects? Are they happening? Are they these amounts, more or less? And how does that influence the balance going forward? Are there any questions? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is kind of the summary. I'm happy to answer any more questions that are in your mind. The next step will be to take all these numbers and put them in a written report that will, it'll be similar to that memo you received in your packet, but we'll have more explanatory information around all those tables. It seemed a little early to give you the whole report prior to this meeting, so those are just sort of the main pieces of what will be the report. The draft report will go to your staff and management for their review, finalize it, and at some point a public hearing at a date to be determined.
All right, does anyone have any further questions about the presentation?
The only thing I would add is it would be the intent that any changes we do would be part of budget adoption, and so they wouldn't take effect until July 1. So that's the intent.
I don't have any questions, Darren. My only observation is, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name is Cheryl Stevens.
Cheryl.
Yes, ma'am.
In Cheryl's presentation, in comparison to other localities, she feels like we're in line. We may be in line, but we're in line with Suffolk. And Suffolk is a whole lot larger than us. And I looked at what our charges are compared to the counties, which is closer home, and we're a whole lot larger than the county, what the county is charging. And I don't really know what system they're on. That's just an observation.
That would only be, as far as the rates, or are you talking about the connection fees? As far as
The connection fees.
Okay. It's on the water side, we're within $80 of the county. On
Yep.
the sewer side, we are higher.
Yeah, it seemed like sewer was the region of the presentation where we had a little more deviation from
Yes.
the norm.
Yeah, we're about
from our neighbors.
3,000 ahead of the county if we adopt these rates. And, historically, we don't do or have not done routine rate increases to keep up with the cost of everything we're doing. And so unfortunately, when we do these, they wind up being sizable increases because we don't do them routinely. The other thing to remember is when you look at those bills, those are every other month bills. So when you divide them in half, that's what the monthly cost is.
There's one thing too about those connection and availability fees. Honestly, they don't impact your existing citizens. They're
It's
impacted
new.
on,
New, okay.
so, the bi-monthly fees do impact the bill that comes to all of your customers every month. This fee, the person it impacts the most is the developer and the home buyer, because that fee, again, is part of that initial development of that lot, whether it be a home or a commercial building or whatever. So while those rates are a little higher than some of the others, I know elected officials have to think about their constituents. Again, the people who live in town today and are water and sewer users are not directly impacted by those availability and connection fees. At public hearings, the only people who show up are developers to talk about those fees.
And it's only a one-time fee.
Correct. One time at the early part of the development. So ultimately, it impacts the cost of the home or the developer's ultimate profit on that development. But as far as your various people who use water and sewer already in the town, that does not impact them.
And I would add both the water and sewer are cheaper than if you had to go put a well or a septic tank in. Both of those are substantially cheaper than if you were having to do that on your own.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Stevens.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Water and sewer, yes.
No other questions for Darren. At this time, we'll move to Finance Committee, headed by Mr. Brooks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to open the Finance Committee meeting. And up first, we have a presentation, lagging here just a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to Laura Ross, our treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Beside me is Zach Hypes with Robinson Farmer and Cox and Associates to talk about our financial report for 2024. He's got a lot of copies for you. Yeah, he's going to pass them around.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Sorry. My name is Zachary Hypes. I'm with Robertson Farmer Cox Associates. And we've audited the financial records for the year ending June 30th, 2024. Before I get into the report, I would just like to discuss some of the topics in the governance letter. You should have a copy of that with the audit report. The first bullet point I want to hit is management and auditor responsibilities. Management is responsible for appropriate accounting policies, including implementation of new standards. For FY24, there were no new standards to implement. Management is responsible for maintaining records sufficient to audit, maintain a system of internal controls, and for the review or preparation of the financial statements. The auditor is responsible for auditing documents, testing controls, verifying appropriate application of accounting principles, and opining on the financial statements. The next topic is accounting estimates. Accounting estimates are generally necessary for financial statements. The most significant use of estimates in the financial statements were the estimate of depreciable lives of the long-term or fixed assets, estimates related to the measurement of pension and OPEB liabilities based on an actuarial study performed by a third party. The next topic is difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Examples of potential difficulties include incomplete documentation, access denied to documentation or audit evidence, or incomplete system of internal controls. For FY24, there were no difficulties noted during the course of the audit. The next thing is corrected and uncorrected misstatements. Most audits include proposed audit adjustments. Corrected misstatements are proposed audit adjustments that were included in the financial statements. Uncorrected misstatements are material audit adjustments proposed to the financial records that were not recorded by management. Professional standards require that the audit firm disclose the nature of uncorrected misstatements. For FY24, there were no uncorrected misstatements. The next topic is management consultation with other independent auditors. This is similar to opinion shopping or obtaining a second opinion. Professional standards require that we disclose to the governing body any knowledge of management consulting a second opinion or second audit firm. We have no knowledge that management has received or requested a second opinion from another audit firm. And then finally, the last topic in the governance letter is audit findings. Professional standards require that we disclose the nature of any audit findings and management's response to those findings. In summary, there were no audit findings as a result of the FY24 audit. So that is kind of all I wanted to talk about in the governance letter. I'd like to move on to the actual financial report. So if you go to page 6 of this report, here you'll find the independent auditor's report. This is the first of 3 reports issued by our audit firm contained in the report document. We issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements, and our report is dated December 20th, 2024. Moving on to the financial statements. There are several financial statements in this document. The first one I'd like to talk about is on page 17. So on page 17, Exhibit 1, we've got the balance sheet. The term fund balance is used to describe the net equity of the town. The total fund balance for the general fund is $43.98 million. And then looking specifically at the unassigned fund balance, that is about $14.82 million. The next financial statement that I would like to look at is on page 23, Exhibit 5. Here we've got a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is similar to an income statement or a profit and loss statement for a for-profit entity. Here on this statement, the report, or the town reported, the town reports the increase or decrease in the net position, excuse me, or equity if you prefer. The town reported an increase in fund balance of 2.9 million in the general fund. Moving on to page 109.
What page, sir?
Oh, sorry, page 109.
Thank you.
Sorry. So here we've got the independent auditor's report on internal controls over financial reporting. This report is a required compliance report for governmental agencies. This report, if applicable, would describe any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in controls and processes over financial reporting. For FY24, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses disclosed. That concludes the end of my remarks. I'm happy to answer questions if the council's got any.
Questions, Mr. Brooks?
Sir.
I've been through a number of these before, and auditors will give what they give, but a lot of times the citizens want to hear one thing. It's a perfectly clean audit, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
That's all I need to have, thank you.
Any other questions regarding the audit? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
See you next year.
And I will mention a copy of it has been placed on our website.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. All right, next we're going to move on and keep it with Laura, December financial statements.
Some more financial stuff. Okay. We are going to look at the first page two. There are two page twos. The first page two will show you what the overall revenue for the month through December is, 4.253586 million. And if you look at the bottom of that page, it'll show you our total expenses, and that is 5,679,181. Right now, our revenue is at 28.63% of where our overall budget is, but as a reminder that we will have revenue coming in June when the real estate taxes are due. We accepted our personal property on December the 5th. Out of that, we have a total collection of personal property of $1,058,439 to date. We billed $1,683,260. We have some adjustments to make. There were automobiles moved in and out of the town, and those adjustments will be made within the next 2 weeks. And we'll be sending out additional bills or sending out credits for those. If you look at meals tax, and that'll be later on pages, between pages, second page 2 through 4. Meals tax is higher during this period and during this time of the year by $177,743, and that total is $970,000 for the year to date. If you look at, let me specifically note this, down under the sales tax, if you look under other local taxes on the second page 2, it will show where we are with regards to the sales tax. Isle of Wight collects sales tax and then remits that to us, and they were behind a bit on that. We received a check on Friday for $237,459, and that was to encompass October, November, December, and January. Typically, they send that once a month, but they've gotten behind on some of their remittances. Any questions? No. All right.
Any questions?
Yes. No.
Nope.
No questions. Okay.
All right.
Going on, as I mentioned earlier, our total expenses are right now at 36.77% of budget. And as before, all the footnotes note any additional information that we have regarding expenditures or revenues. There is a debt breakdown in your packet, and outstanding debt as of the end of December was $4,014,000. $671. The next due date for our payments of 2020 Series A-2 and A-1 will be April of 2025. And as I mentioned before, the last payment on the vac truck will be in August. We continue to make monthly payments on the B debt until that is paid off, and the outstanding on that is $782,000. Let's see. The due dates, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have anything due until April, but the loan is paid monthly, and that's about $18,000. Any questions?
Any questions? Hearing none,
We'll go on.
go on to cash balances.
Okay, our cash balances, and you'll see that packet. This is cash balances at the top of it. Right now, we have total available to the town, should anything immediately happen, is $18,455,000. We'll talk about investments quickly. You have the investment benchmark sheet to show you what our overall rate of return has been through the year, and current investment returns through December, and that includes July through December, are $576,863. If you look at this one report called Compliance, in the investment report and investment policy that we adjusted a little over a year ago, there were some benchmarks that we needed to meet, and we are in 100% compliance with that. And I believe that's all. Any questions?
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the cash balances, you said that 18.4-ish million on hand. Does that include those designated funds?
Mm-hmm. Those are usable balances.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for our treasurer?
Just one comment if I could.
Please.
Achieving a audit such as this is no small feat, and I think it goes to as a testament of the professionalism of our treasurer and her staff. So I'd like to take this opportunity to commend Laura and her staff for a wonderful job as far as that audit was concerned.
Thank you, Councilman Bowen.
Completely agree. And coming from the private sector, whenever I knew an audit was coming up, I had people do that for me because it is daunting. And you get questioned every single day.
And they don't go away until they
That's
get the
correct.
answer.
That's correct. It's got to be right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
I do want to mention one thing. During the training, I guess not training, but the training for new council members, I mentioned that I was going to put a little note in the footnotes, and Councilman Cutler found it. And so he gets some money.
All right.
It's not real, but I'll bring it around. So thank you.
Councilman Cutler wins the prize. You know who read every single line of that report.
He did.
Thank you, Laura. That will conclude the Finance Committee.
How about your invoice?
Oh, yeah, now we have, sorry about that, skipping on me. We have 3 invoices over $20,000. One regarding the Windsor Castle Park sidewalk for $104,000 to Athens. Next, we have another one to East Coast Emergency Vehicles for outfitting a couple of our cars for $55,279. And one was added this morning. I'm assuming that is just for inventory for our public works to Core and Main for water meters for a total of $30,500. Anything regarding those 3?
Yes, Mr. Brooks, I had a question
Please.
about the water meters. Just as it relates to the previous presentation about the water, and there was no change to, I believe it was the connection fee. Have we seen fluctuation in the price of these meters? I mean,
Yes, I mean, they have gone up, but the connection fee still is sufficient to cover the cost of the meters and the time related to putting those in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What are they, 3,050 apiece, thereabout?
That sounds right.
305.
Yeah, 305, right. Okay. All right, well, we will pass those on to council for approval. Now that concludes the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you.
At this time, we have Public Buildings and Welfare, chaired by Mrs. Butler.
Yes, I'd like to open Public Buildings and Welfare with myself as chair, along with Councilman Harris and Councilman Cutler. But before I call up Mr. Luder for the presentation of the Grange, I want to make a couple of observations to Lee and to Eric. Lee, I found your presentation interesting. I had never looked at asset limits before. But I will tell you, in the comprehensive plan, one of the things that does concern me is our poverty level here in Smithfield. And maybe that's why our existing citizens can't purchase homes due to the limitations and the type of housing that we do offer. African Americans make up 19% of the population in Smithfield, but yet 31% are at the poverty level. And that's a concern about me. And a lot of times with the comprehensive plan, we focus on land use, and it's made up of more than just land use of other areas in which I feel we should be concerned about. And Eric, I hope you get some answers today. Mr. Luder will be presenting a presentation on the Grange, and it's a great opportunity with our new council too to be able to ask him any questions, and I hope we can get some resolution to some questions that we may have. So the first thing on the Public Buildings and Welfare is a presentation of the Grange by Mr. Luder.
Thanks, Valerie. I've only brought 2 slides today. And before we even get into that, I just want to congratulate the new council on your election victories in November. Immediately thereafter, I reached out to Mike Smith to tell Mike that we had a highly contentious process in getting the Grange approved, and I'm well aware that many that sit before me today were opposed to that project. We have zero interest in moving forward without the support of the council. Nothing that my father has ever done, that I've ever done in this town, has been intended to be in defense or in objection to the citizens and the leadership of the town of Smithfield. So the purpose of me reaching out to Mike was to simply say that. And so I appreciate the opportunity to sit in front of you all today and to show you all the plan that was approved. And in addition to that, to tell you that based upon feedback that we heard and based upon a variety of circumstances above and beyond just the change in leadership at the council, but other factors, that we have a revised plan that we will show you all for consideration. But it's very important to us that we have your support. So this is the approved plan that was approved. I think it was June of last year, if I remember correctly. And this particular plan had 282 units. It included 3-story apartments. It included the farmer's market, a relocation of the farmer's market. It included a hotel, and it included a number of home sites. The next plan, Tip, if you'll go to that. This is a revised plan that we have developed that we think makes sense. It still allows us to accomplish the key objectives that we started with. Those objectives, as a reminder, were, number one, a beautification of the western entrance to downtown. Number two, based upon feedback we had with citizens and in particular Smithfield Foods, and later Riverside Hospital, things that were important to them were a variety of housing, a hotel, and additional restaurants. What we heard earlier today, I will tell you all that one thing that we did that you will notice is we have removed the apartments from this proposed plan. This plan, with respect to dwellings, is 93 dwellings. It is a mix of single-family lots and townhomes. We believe that those townhomes, there's 45 of those, I believe, those townhomes would be for rent or for sale. Our research when we started several years ago told us that there still is a shortage of for rent product in the town of Smithfield. And so we felt it was important to include for rent product, but because of the controversy of the density, and in all honesty, just the economics associated with apartments today versus what they were 2 years ago, we scrapped those. Having said that, we heard earlier about the need for affordability and one-bedroom units in particular, and this plan, those townhomes will not be one-bedroom units. So it's, this plan does away with that. I'm just being fully transparent and honest. So that's, the townhomes will be 2- and 3-bedroom townhomes. This particular plan, we had a traffic study done with it. One of the biggest concerns of the citizens was traffic. This plan, if you all like it and would want to move forward, is a 41% reduction in traffic counts versus the approved plan. This plan includes, and we think one of the things that's very important to this overall project, it maintains a permanent home for the farmers market. And we believe that that is an important anchor. Judy Winslow, I know she was in front of you all recently. We did a lot of research with her. The vendors spoke. The vendors believe that they need a long-term solution. They need a place where adverse weather allows them to still be open for business on Saturdays. I don't know what happened. But it does include the farmers market. We've positioned it there in red, similar to where it was originally positioned. We modified it. We modified the spin on it a little bit. And this is, again, reiterate this. Our plan with this all along has been to build what you all want, what you and the county want, realizing that the farmers market is a partnership between you and the county. So, again, if it's something that you all want to move forward with, it's something that we would build for you. What we've shown previously was a collaborative effort in building something that we thought made sense, but again, that's ultimately your decision. You'll notice the hotel fronting Main Street. In the last 90 days, we have an interested party for a hotel. Again, the research and the long-term vision for the town of Smithfield shows that you all need another hotel. Smithfield Foods very adamant. The town and the businesses and restaurants in town are losing opportunities because they're choosing to let people visiting them stay elsewhere because there's insufficient hotel rooms. So that is currently about a 100-key hotel where we have an interested party with a national brand for that hotel. Again, in between the farmers market and the hotel is 5,000 square feet of retail. Again, we would personally love to see two restaurants in this development, and so we've earmarked that. Important to note that the schoolhouse stays where it is. A question was asked earlier today about the brick wall and how that would be positioned. We asked you all previously, and I sit before you today, would ask you all if you all like the project and would like to move forward, that's something that you all would support and you all would build. We could build it for you, or you could build it yourself. Whether the brick wall goes in front of the schoolhouse or behind the schoolhouse, that's your decision, it's not ours. We certainly would love to have a little bit of say in how the brick wall looks, because it's, as many of you all know, my father loves brick, and he has built a lot of brick walls in Smithfield, and he has a particular look that he likes. So, but we currently have the brick wall coming behind the schoolhouse so that the schoolhouse is visible from Main Street. A lot of open space, as you can see. Again, that was something that was very important from the beginning, was having a lot of open space. This proposal allows for open space. It provides green space in close proximity to the farmers market, because we know that there's surges in vendors and participant demand, especially towards Christmas. And so this would allow for that surge to occur with temporary pop-ups if necessary. And lastly, I would say all of the green space in the back, as part of this overall project, my father is prepared to give to the town of Smithfield for you all to do with it what you want. So again, what we would ask for was, we would ask for your support. We would ask for the commitment that was made on the farmers market of $1.4 million. We'd ask that you all build the brick wall, and we will take care of the rest. Any questions?
I got a couple questions. With the relocation of the farmers market, have the entrances and also been relocated?
Valerie, I apologize. I should have pointed out the traffic flow. So there's one change in the traffic flow. The original plan had a right in, right out beside the hotel. Because of the reduced density, we don't need that. So you have one entrance off of Main Street in. The entrance from Grace is the same as it was. The entrance from the YMCA is the same that it was. And the right in off of Route 10 is the same that it was.
The entrance that's on Main Street, is that still across from Church Manor?
Yes.
You mentioned the retail space, well, the restaurant space. Originally, there was going to be a restaurant on one end of the farmers market and retail on the other. Does that still apply?
We redesigned, our proposed redesign has the restaurant in the middle of the farmers market, as opposed to having it bookended.
Okay. And where is parking?
Parking is to the left, all through there, and down, and along.
Oh, okay. And one last question.
Chip, I can't read it from here, but could you, to Valerie's question in terms of number of parking spaces?
Total of 265, 254. $254 plus 166? Well, that's big parking for single family and townhomes.
265 in total.
265, okay. And one last question, with the hotel, will there be a conference room or a conference area, if that's one of the amenities that Smithfield Foods is interested in?
I have put the interested hotel developer in contact with Smithfield Foods to talk. I don't have those details today.
Okay.
Roughly how much acreage is the big green space on the left?
That green space is between 20 and 25 acres.
Thank you.
I have a few questions.
Yes.
Thank you for coming out today to speak with us, and thank you for the philanthropy of your family in the past. Thank you for that. A few questions about your new proposal. What would be the rent on the 2 and 3 bedroom townhomes projected?
They are, to be honest with you, we have not gotten finite cost on these. We know that the concept works based upon how it has complemented other apartment projects. Tip, would you dare to take a guess? I'm going to say for a 2-bedroom, it's going to be somewhere between $2,000 and $2,400. But and knowing construction costs based upon some of the other projects, I'm pretty comfortable with that range. $2,500, 3-bedroom. Yep.
You said 25 to 29 range?
Depending on the market study. Yes, that's 2,500 is a big gap.
And will there be, is this going to be managed property, or is it going to be sold and rented out by individuals? I mean, how's the rental process going to take place?
Again, those condos will be for sale or for rent. I can tell you that we have a group of people that would be interested in taking at least half of them and holding them to rent them, because we think that there's good demand for that. But the decision, we will offer them for sale or for rent.
Okay. And the price on those townhomes for sale?
On a per square foot base is going to be probably around $400 a foot.
What is the square footage?
It will range. They'll range anywhere from about 1,500 to 2,600. Tip, is that?
I'd say 1,700 on average. Price around 450, I'd say, all in for each county. And again, depending on the market study.
Similarly about the homes, so size, price?
The homes, again, we have a verbal agreement with a home builder who would buy the lots. That's not something that we will do personally. But based upon discussions we've had with them, they're going to be comparable in size to what you have in downtown today. And keep in mind that all of this has to be approved by BHAR. So,
are they all single family or some duplex?
the lots are all single family. The townhomes would replace the duplexes from the prior project.
Okay. I think previously, or at least from some reading, we were looking at about $685,000 per single family home. Is that expected to stay in that price range?
I think you're probably in the ballpark. Again, I don't want to speak for somebody else, but I think you're in the ballpark.
Are you prepared to, just out of curiosity, who your builder is?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Tip? No, the home builder?
Working with Greenwood Homes.
Yeah. And you all might know that Greenwood has some land in Smithfield, in the county, and so they're highly interested in what's happening in Isle of Wight County. But we've done our research on them, and we believe we're confident that they can build the quality. What was important to us and what remains important to us is that this project is a quality project.
Previously, in the submission of the Grange project, there was some follow-on reimbursement for Public Works put in. Is that going to be the case with this revised project?
I think that was taken. The only request we had of our last proposal to you all was the 1.4 million. We were responsible for everything else. In the beginning, we did seek public reimbursement. One thing I would like to discuss at some point, and I don't think today is the right time, but again, we're not fully prepared because we don't have a cost. But we designed this plan based upon the power line that is above ground running across this piece of property. And Chip, if you will point out to them where that is. So there's an easement that runs right there, and that's currently the power line that runs along this property. No different than the downtown restoration renovation project some 20 years ago, in which citizens actually led this initiative. Citizens and my father and Smithfield Foods helped support it, but the lines on Main Street were buried in the heart of Main Street, and that was a public-private venture, if you will, really privately led by citizens. Bill Riddick's wife led it, and Bill, it's what, 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
Maybe longer.
Maybe longer. But, personally, would love to see those power lines buried as opposed to kept above ground there. And, and that's something that I think the project needs, something we'd like to talk to you guys about at some point. We don't have a cost for it today. Something we'd like to talk to you all about. Is this project 100% contingent upon that? No. But I hope that in light of looking at this project in totality, based upon the value of the lots that 25 acres represents, that was about over $6 million of land value that we're offering to you all to do with it whatever you want.
So can you clarify on the farmer's market building? So it's kind of a backwards L shape there. That the I guess northerly pointing sector of that is the farmer's market?
Yes.
And then the lower two rectangles are a single restaurant?
In the mix, right in the middle of the L is the restaurant, right there.
There's farmers market stalls on either side of the restaurant.
Okay. So for the restaurant, I mean, who's going to be responsible for that after build out? Is that?
So the plan was and would still be that we would look to condominiumize this and actually sell that restaurant to a private business. And as I think you all know, the Pack family has an interest in being the operator, the builder and the operator of that restaurant. So we would actually condominiumize it such that they own it, they pay for the land and the building. It's not something that the town, the citizens are responsible for. And then you all work out an agreement on any sort of shared expenses, because there was efficiency in bathrooms in particular, having bathrooms available to the public for the farmer's market, but also being utilized for the restaurant. So you'd work out an agreement with them on that. But outside of that, you all would own all of the land, you'd own the farmer's market, the land surrounding the farmer's market, including the parking. But they would, well, again, parking would need to be shared as well, between the restaurant and the town, or the entity that's created. I think there was talk about an entity. You already have the farmer's market is already owned jointly by the town and the county. So, so that would need to be worked out.
So the parking would be deeded to the town or this entity?
Mm-hmm.
And so so essentially the town becomes a landlord? Is that how I'm understanding it? I mean, if we're owning that building and land, we're responsible for the maintenance and the ongoing costs.
Well, you would not own the restaurant. You would own.
Other than that?
Yeah, other than the restaurant, you would own the building and the land surrounding the building, and yes, you would be responsible for the maintenance of that.
And the intent had always been that there would be an agreement over that and a common area maintenance fee that all parties would pay into. So the restaurant, farmer's market, everybody would pay into to cover maintenance of the building, the parking, all of that. So it wouldn't be solely on the local government to cover that. We would only be responsible.
So this is with the EDA, is what you're
Right.
saying?
That was the discussion originally. I'm seeing this for the first time as you are, but that was the original discussion, is that whatever entity owned the facility would then have access a common area maintenance fee on the tenants to pay for maintenance.
And so they're going to be, I go back to the little key on the bottom, there are 36 units for the farmer's market, is that what I'm understanding right?
Yes.
So it said, do you have an estimate on what the,
24 stalls, which is what,
Oh, 20.
is what Judy had requested, and that was what was originally programmed in, plus the ability to have additional non-covered stalls and overflow opportunity, or space for overflow. And again, we believe that this plan provides that space for overflow.
what would be the approximate size on those? You're calling them stalls, but how?
Chip, do you recall, I mean, again, we designed it based
Is that what it
upon.
says up there? Is that, oh, that's the whole thing. Okay.
10 by 10?
Is that right, Preston? Originally, they were 10 by 10, but to be perfectly frank, we haven't laid this out with an architect yet. We didn't want to spend the expense to get a designer to lay it all
Okay.
out. Because it's going to take some pushing and pulling to get it right, size it right, so that it's efficient and it does what it needs to do.
Right.
But we did scale this based upon the original design and the size of the stalls, so that, you know, so that I believe we're covered there. I mean, again, keep in mind, we're going to build you all what you want. And what was designed and presented was based upon the stall size that Judy and the vendors believe was needed, and is currently comparable to what's currently there. And I think one of the most important things was your current site is, doesn't provide for growth. And many of the vendors, as I mentioned earlier, the weather conditions, lack of bathrooms, the parking is not ideal. I mean, it's amazing what they and you all do with that space, but it doesn't provide for growth. And everything I was told was that the vendor community is strongly behind moving to the Grange. And many people, myself included, is this is going to help all of the downtown vendor community, the restaurants, the shops. By this project will drive incremental business to them.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So the farmer's market would have 24 stalls, is that correct?
Yes.
And how does that provide for growth?
Uh,
Where's
just,
the growth, where would the growth be?
with that green space that's around it,
So a flexible space.
correct. All the green space on the north side, on the south side, across the parking. There's the parking that's between that's to the south, the southwest, to the left there, to there and come there. So you've got all of that green space there that provides for.
So it'd still be pop-up tents like we have now?
As shown here, yes. Nothing's to say that if the demand wasn't good, you could build more permanent on that space.
Except it has a power line easement.
I'm sorry?
Except for the power line easement.
Well, yes, but there's enough space below or on both sides of that, especially where that writing is park overflow parking. And yes, that would limit your parking overflow, but you've got all that land to the north now that could provide for overflow parking that you all would own. That's still in close proximity.
Is that farmer's market building enclosed and climate controlled, or is that open facing outward around the perimeter?
It's whatever you want it to be. It's currently programmed to be open. We originally had garage doors, retractable garage doors that would open and close. But again, for cost reasons, the decision was that let's not put the doors in, let's leave it open air. Again, but it's whatever you all want it to be.
The smaller orange building, you said that's projected to be 2 more restaurants?
Well, we show it as office retail. It's whatever the demand drives it. Again, I'd love for it to be a restaurant, but I'm not going to run the restaurant, so it's not my decision.
So that would be something that would be sold to a private,
Yes.
whoever wants to,
Correct.
that the town would not own that?
Correct.
So we currently have an award-winning farmer's market that's successful at everything except for making money. It does bring in tourism dollars to our businesses, and it's ideally located for that. So if I understand correctly, you are asking for the $1.4 million from the town and moving the farmer's market, but is that the only option for having this? Have you given consideration of just having that be retail space? That that's something that in the comprehensive plan and throughout the election, many citizens were interested in more retail dining and shopping opportunities in the town. So are you saying this is a go, no-go without moving the farmer's market and $1.4 million?
We've never considered this project without the farmer's market. Well, let me say it differently. We've never strongly considered this project without the farmer's market.
Has the county seen this plan?
The county has not seen this plan.
A lot to digest.
Understand.
And I appreciate you bringing it out. One question, and I don't want to get too trivial, but the farmer's market has a real issue with parking as it is right now. I don't see where you can accommodate a normal farmer's market with this. If the hotel is somewhat at capacity, the restaurant's kicking, and then you have the farmer's market, I don't see enough parking. Am I missing something?
We think, again, we think it's sufficient with the overflow that we've provided, and also our opinion that, that property that we would as part of this that we would give you all provides a lot of opportunity for additional overflow parking. But, I would, you all would have to decide whether it's sufficient parking, and certainly have Judy Winslow involved in the discussion. Judy hasn't seen this either. I mean, we literally wrapped this up the end of last week. And again, it is, Jeff, it is a lot to process, and I'm happy to make myself available for further questions at a later date. I'm sure you all will, you'll probably have some, so, I'll make myself available. What I would hope is that we can answer your unanswered questions, and we can, you all can decide one way or the other. This has been a long process. One of the things I really wanted and want to get done is, I'd like my father to see this, and he's not getting any younger.
Madam Chair, I been sitting here listening intently. You may recall I'm the one that made the deciding vote as far as the initial going down the road with this project was concerned. And I'd like to go kind of maybe backwards a little bit. We talked a lot about the farmers market and how we've had a thriving farmers market. In fact, one of the questions I think that was in the Smithfield Times a couple of weeks ago, what do we do with the farmers market? And one of the answers was, well, let's negotiate a long-term lease with the Bank of Southside Virginia for a farmers market. Well, that's a two-way street. Bank of Southside Virginia has got to ultimately decide that they would agree to that. So there's no guarantee there. The way the real estate market is, you don't ever know exactly what's going to happen as far as that piece of property is concerned. They've served us well, and they've been very, very kind to us, and it's been successful. But I don't think you can always make the assertion or the assumption that that's going to always be an available option. My biggest concern, I look at this now, and I look at the project as it was before. And I believe that the developer has made significant strides in an attempt to accommodate the concerns that have been aired by a number of different citizens, the traffic aspect of it, the density, just a lot of things that make this certainly more palatable than it was at the onset. My concern is pretty straightforward. After having lived here a number of years, 40 plus, we now have, and we're going to hear in a short period of time about entrance corridor issues and how we handle entrance corridor. This is one of our primary gateways into the town of Smithfield. This is what people see as they approach the historical district. And it worries me considerably as to, if not this, with this design, then what? What are we ultimately going to ask for to go there? What are we going to approve? Mr. Luter decides, okay, well, this is not going to work. I'm going to put it up for sale, which you can do, and it's not rattling sabers or, bringing in the fear mongering or whatever, but if not this, then what? I would love to see on that corner as you approach our dear town, as you go into the historic district, something that's representative of the quality of what we have in the town of Smithfield. Are there some details to be worked out? Why, absolutely. But to come to us today with the density reduction that you have here, with the opportunity to obtain green space, which is at a premium for the town to do whatever it wants to, I feel much better looking at this project than I did the first slide that went up there. And when you look at this compared to some of the developments that we have on the table in Smithfield, I, there are good points and bad points to everything, but I think, quite honestly, this would be something that would be a significant improvement and would be welcoming to citizens that come into this great town. And the fact, it's been much said about, well, and I'm gonna just lay it out there, the looters this, the looters that, they get what they want, they do this, they do that. I don't care who it was that would come before us and show me this as part of the entrance card of the town of Smithfield. I think I would have significant support for. The fact that the looters are doing it is only, and it's been debated back and forth ad nauseum about this, that, the other, pertaining to, the quality of what they've done or what comes in return or things like that. That's irrelevant to me. I'm looking at this as the western side of the town of Smithfield and what it could look like, no more, no less, and that's it. Again, to y'all's point, there are some details that need to be worked out, but if not this, then what? What do we tell, whether it's Mr. Luter or the next developer that comes in, this is what we want to have ideally at this parcel of property. And when I look over there and see that open space like that in that part of town, right next to the area of the creek and where things run through there, I've said about all I can say. I like the concept, and I support the concept. Thank y'all very much.
I do have one question. How does this I don't know if I like the placement of this farmer's market, but how does this compare to the original one as far as the stalls are concerned?
Same number. Hit the same number of stalls, 24.
Okay.
Okay. What is different is the amount of green space. No, Tip, show the, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's 24, and the original stalls was 2,500, so it was 100 square feet per stall, basically, 120 square feet per stall. And I think what we're showing is of comparable size. But the difference, Valerie, to answer your question, go back to the original Tip. So the original did provide for, and it's not shown clearly here, but outside of the conditioned space, there were some trellises, or there were scheduled to be and would be some trellises there. Okay, and that was an additional 20. So we don't have those shown in the new plan. We have the same number of covered.
But we have enough green space to get the additional.
But we have the green space beside the, now go back to the new one. So just as you can see, there's green space, and Melissa designed it as such. There's green space just to the left of the L that would allow those trellises and would allow additional tents to be placed. And once, and again, if you all want to discuss further and you want to talk to Judy about this and whether that's sufficient, and if it is not sufficient and we need a little more green space, then again, let's work together to figure it out.
I think it would be a good idea to speak with Judy and her staff
Sure.
to determine that.
Can I just clarify something on the picture? So the little tan boxes, those would be the townhouses, is that correct?
Yes.
And then this green squares around the outside are the single-family lots? Am I
Yes.
looking at that correctly?
That's
Okay.
correct. Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry, Darren, and there was, at some point, there was some discussion about having, like alley parking behind the houses. That's not so now, or? I mean, the entrance, the garages or something were gonna be in the back, there wasn't gonna be, how is this different?
The townhomes would need to have garage fronts.
But the housing, the single-family lots, those, they have a
Single-housing
driveway?
lots are big enough to where they can have side or rear parking.
The front-facing driveway, though?
Yes.
Yes, gotcha.
So is there going to be some sort of, I'm guessing, an HOA that maintains the ponds and the green space that would not be deeded out?
Yeah, the pond closest to the farmer's market is that can be discussed. I mean, if you all don't want any responsibility for that, then we can certainly take that on.
Probably for Michael or maybe Tammy, is this a significant deviation from the previous plan where it's starting back from scratch with the planning commission? I would consider it to be that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the original project is approved with certain profit conditions, and all of those have to change because this is completely different. I mean, they have conditional zoning for this property. They would apply for an amendment to their conditional zoning.
Will you continue to need the PMUD designation for this, or can it be zoned back?
If you don't use the PMUD, you can't make the setbacks work.
Right, and the PMUD allows you to mix the different types of uses together on one project.
So again, one of the things that we would ask, and because we want to be partners, we want to collaborate, and and again, we do have an approved project that we could do or we could sell to somebody else that could do. We would ask that you all work with us in helping us move through the zoning process expeditiously in light of what's already been approved and the fact that this is a significant reduction against what's already been approved. So we're looking to be good partners. We heard the citizens. We heard you all many of you all who sit in front of us today, and in an effort to again stay with the original mission of beautifying this entrance to Smithfield and providing some needed amenities. We think that this is a great alternative and compromise that hopefully you all will support.
Hey, Joe, let me ask one. Now that you've reduced, excuse me, other than the Grace Street cut-through, you have 3 entries, 3 exits. Why is that the Grace Street cut-through still so important to you?
Well, because it's a natural flow. It's the natural flow of the road system, the existing road system.
Right, but it's natural flow right down through the middle of the historic district.
It is, and Main Street, but it's the vast majority of Bill, I can't speak to. All I know is it's a 41% reduction in traffic count as a result of the reduced density, and the way we designed this. There will absolutely be some increase down Grace Street, but it's going to be far less than what's already been approved, significantly less. And with the road design as it is versus what it was, we've still got the same, other than the right in and the right out into the hotel. The roads are as was originally proposed. We were told that we might not have to do the right in off of Route 10 based upon the traffic counts, but I said, that's,
Yeah.
that's not the right decision. The right decision is for us to spend the money to do that, because I think it has an impact on traffic flow.
One other question, because it'll certainly come up during public hearings. Did y'all give any more consideration to covering the collection pond at the corner?
We really haven't. We haven't considered that, because I am highly confident that we're going to fence it and we're going to landscape it, and it's going to be a good-looking pond as opposed to a what's the name? BMP, excuse me. Yeah. We did not give that serious consideration. There was an added cost component to it. Plus, quite frankly, in my view, it's an aesthetic. This is going to be an aesthetic attraction to this project, not a detriment.
Who's chairing this one? Thank you.
Mr. Harris, to your point, what worries me a little bit after what I saw over at the outlet malls in Williamsburg, in which they had a covered BMP that ended up burning for about a week or so. I don't know from a regulatory perspective if they're starting to look at those things now. That was a significant mess over there. I think they had actually paved over top of it, and the entire parking lot collapsed into what was basically an inferno. I don't know.
Joe, will there still be a second collection pond under the townhouses?
No, the second collection pond is now above surface, as you see there. Preston, I'm right on that, right?
Yeah, there's 3 surface ponds.
Yeah, 3 surface
Yeah.
ponds, nothing underground.
Any more questions or any more discussion?
I agree with Jeff. I think it's a lot to chew on. Some of the reservations that Ms. Butler's had and citizens had tonight on the cost and the, places where their children can live, the $450,000 to $685,000 is it's a pretty steep price, and $2,000 to $3,000 a month rental. But thank you for revising your package. And look forward to studying it in more depth.
I know that I'm not supposed to speak out, but please do not just twist my words. The council pushed back on higher density. The higher density has been removed. It's in smaller dwellings that come with higher density, so we can't. People can make good money and still want to choose to live.
Just have a line.
And those rents are in line. Please do not twist my words to the region, please.
Darren, my only observation to what you just said is, I don't recall from either presentation that either of, the original project or this one, where anything about affordable housing had ever been discussed. The only thing that I know that would have been marketable rates or affordable rates would have been the apartment complexes if it had been Virginia Housing lending.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the residential properties, affordable housing was never discussed. And I know I got dinged or talked about because I was one of the council people that voted for Mallory Scott Farm subdivision, and I have never publicly said why. One of the reasons that I did support that subdivision was because at the time of the discussion, that was one of the things that we did discuss with the developer. And he said that his duplexes and townhomes would be in the range of a mid-200s, 225 and up. That's been several years ago, and as you know, the real estate market now is out of whack. So I don't really know what those costs would be now. I was disappointed that the first phase were single-family housing. Because of affordable housing, I was hoping that the townhouses and the duplexes were first. But Wellington Estates said that they wanted properties comparable to theirs across the street for them. So that is why single-family houses are being built. And I don't know if duplexes or townhomes are slated in that next phase or not. So I don't really know what's going to be affordable when the time comes and it gets to those. But we never discussed affordable housing in this project. And if that's the case, then yeah, we need to go back to the drawing board and have additional discussion about it. But I'm sure that that will probably have an effect on the density.
Yeah, I think just more of a general concern about affordable housing, and not even, government mandated affordable housing, but lower cost housing or workforce housing, things like that. That not saying that it was ever being addressed by this project, but certainly not at that price point now.
I would simply say, I'd certainly ask you all as a council to decide whether you want affordable housing on this particular piece of property. If you want affordable housing on this particular piece of property, I'm an owner of an affordable housing company that's got 15,000 units. And if you want us to build affordable housing on this particular piece of property, it's something we can absolutely do. But I don't think that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Any other discussion? It's been a good discussion.
Michael, can you forward any of this information to us so we can have this to look over? And
Yes.
any extra?
You'd like a copy of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and any extra information that would
Well,
help us.
this is what we've put together. Again, this is, again, as the slide says, discussion purposes only. I'm happy to get on the phone and answer additional questions you all have. If you've got particular concerns and things such as you don't like the position of the farmer's market and should we look at doing this or that, we can, it's a puzzle. I mean, we've got a certain amount of flexibility. The things that are driving this plan are the easements. We've got the Dominion Power easement and we have a water sewer easement. And that water sewer easement tip is showing you right now where it is. So those are important things that have to be designed around.
Excuse me. How tall is the hotel?
The hotel was 42. Yep. 42, 3 stories. I'm sure that the potential buyer would love to have another 4 feet if you'd allow it, but
He can ask.
Mary Ellen?
Well, I just had kind of a general comment. We kind of talk about the farmer's market as a here or there kind of project. That if the farmer's market is here, that we wouldn't have it downtown, in the original downtown, the location that it is now. And that farmer's market, I mean, like Darren said, the people that run it now, they've done a great job with it. I mean, it is there for 3.5 hours a week or whatever. So I've never been convinced that we have to move it. I think we can have it there, which brings a lot of traffic downtown to the shops and stuff like that. And if you want to build another market there that's open the other 6 days and 20 hours a week, I mean, that's fine. Have at it, So I don't think it's an either or. I think it can be a both and. Just my 2 cents.
Again, all I would ask you to do is is consult those that are actively involved in it day to day if you haven't, because that's what we did from the very beginning.
Any more comments? So Michael, where do we go from here? Additional conversations with Mr. Luter before putting his packet together to go to planning?
I would think so. I think any comments, concerns that council has, to send them on, and we can get them to the team, and if there's changes to be made or requests, we can do that, and that way they have a basis before they go start doing the full-on package that would be required for a rezoning. I don't know what kind of timeline you guys were looking for.
Obviously, I would like to have some understanding from you all on how much time you need to gather your questions, come back to me, and then make a decision. As we all know, this project started over 3.5 years ago, and we need to make a decision one way or the other.
Well, I mean, after we debated what we've debated today, I don't know why we can't set a deadline for a certain period of time to get the remarks in it. From a management perspective, it helps Michael out a little bit, and then we'll know from reasonable certainty perspective when we're going to get our answers. And I think to run through Michael as the clearinghouse is the appropriate thing to do, so we don't have any questions that are not being disseminated to all involved. Mr. Mayor, what do you think?
I think 30 days is more than enough.
Well, and I agree with that, Mike. If we get town council meeting is next week, but if we have a definitive date when to get the questions or concerns into Michael, we can have another discussion at the next committee meeting.
That's
Right,
correct.
30 days would put us past that, so it would need to be quicker than 30 days.
For the next committee meeting.
Right, the next committee meeting is on the 24th.
Okay.
And so, I mean, if 2 weeks
That
would be the 10th of February, and then that would give them 2 weeks to prepare anything they needed to prepare. That sound?
We're on your schedule. Again, the only thing I ask is let's not drag this out.
Right.
Just
I'm not so
please.
sure. Based on what I heard, I didn't hear a whole lot of questions, just the variety of the responses that came and the variables to the questions.
So we should be able to make that deadline.
Yes, I don't have any problem with that deadline either, Mike, but let me just wrap my head on it. Any concerns we would submit to you, you'd relay those back to Joe.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then we would have a response.
And then the
we would
process
share.
starts back over. He still has to go to the planning commission.
Right, they
Planning
would have to
commission,
amend their
come back to the
rezoning.
town council.
Yes, sir.
So the sooner the better would work for everybody involved then.
Yes, sir.
And again, please, all I ask is if you're not supportive and you don't want to do it, don't drag us along. That's all I ask.
I don't know that we're going to go through this exercise of back and forth if we weren't amenable to listening to what you had to say.
Can I ask two more questions that I think will help us? And just to clarify, because there were a lot of questions, I had a lot of questions. You're requesting $1.4 million and a brick wall, and that's it?
And I'd like to have a discussion with you all about the power line.
And that would be down the road anyway.
Yep.
And then I would just ask for the citizens that, as we were campaigning and speaking with a lot of citizens, if a lot of citizens did not want to contribute tax dollars to this project. So if that's a no, with a much better project where you could turn that into just retail space, which the citizens do want, that, as we discuss and mull this over, that you also consider that.
So again, what I would ask of you all is if your condition is that the farmer's market not be part of this overall project, you need to come back and say we'll support it, but provided the farmer's market is not part of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So Michael, so I understand, what deadline did we get to get the questions to you?
The 10th of February would be 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
And that
So
would-
if we have any questions or concern or modifications, we want to get those to Michael by February the 10th. And that's so that he can get it to Mr. Luter and his team, and we can have another presentation and discussion at our committee meeting on the 24th.
And if we would, any questions that come into Michael will be shared with all the council.
Yes.
Because that could also prompt us to have better questioning ability. If that's all right.
So be it.
I'm not sure how you all do this, but I guess one thing that I do want to point out is that, you know, the farmer's market is a joint venture between the town and the county. And as you all know, the county is supportive of this project. And to your point about the creating a competing farmer's market, in theory, that's not our intent. That's not what we're looking to do. We're looking for this to be a project that is of benefit to the citizens of the town and the county. So we don't have any interest in that. But the county, you know, the county has absolutely voiced support and interest in the farmer's market going here. It's important, just the way that our family thinks, that is supported by both the town and the county.
I'd like to backtrack on that, Mary Ellen. If that's what the town council decide that they want, because the farmer's market is a joint venture, I question whether or not the county would want to do 2 farmers markets. So that may be something, since it's town property, and if that's a recommendation, that would be something that the town would want to take on by itself. If the current farmer's market is staying where it is. You know, I'm just putting that out there. I don't know if the county, and I feel the county is a buy-in because they've already set their money aside. So they are in a position that they want to move forward with the farmer's market at the new location. But if it remains where it is, then there wouldn't be any funding from either parties. But if we're looking to put an ancillary farmers market in the Grange that's in the town of Smithfield, that would probably be an expense to us by ourselves. You know, but that may be a question or concern that we submit to Michael when we submit the questions to him to try to figure out how that would work if possible.
No, I've got a concern. What if the Bank of Southside Virginia, no, it won't take long. What if the Bank of Southside Virginia decides they want to sell the building tomorrow? I mean, right tomorrow, everything's up, gone, done. And then you don't have a farmer's market. I don't know and I don't mean it in the wrong way, but that's their property. That is not the town of Smithfield's property.
Well,
And that's
when the
what worries
questions,
me. That
when the
worries
questions
me.
are submitted, that would be a topic of discussion.
Sure.
So
Okay.
we've been faced with that for years.
I'm sorry?
We've been faced with that for years. You know, there was a reaction to say we can move the farmer's market to the Grange, and now how long has this been going now? For 3 years or more? So we faced that for 3 years or more, and that was the reason in creating a committee to investigate alternatives to the BSV.
Sure.
So I think that, you know, there's no plug and play solution. There's no farmer's market's going to be built in 1-2 years, probably. You know, but I mean, the ground hasn't even been broken,
Hope
and
for
it's
the
been
best.
approved for building. So I don't think that, you know, concerning ourselves about having a farmer's market at the Grange is as important as concerning ourselves about not having a farmer's market at the BSV and what are we going to do immediately. So, you know, there's a whole lot of, I think, moving pieces to resolve for an immediate solution more than this being the ultimate solution.
But if I'm not mistaken, the county does have an approval lease of the Bank of Southside through 2026. Am I 20?
It's year to year now. The Bank of Southside Virginia was not agreeable to a multi-year lease.
They were not agreeable.
We historically had a long-term lease. However, the current environment, they are not. They agree to year over year, and that is it. They would not agree to a multi-year lease.
Okay, that's one of the questions that we can forward, Michael. That'll be sent out to all of us with the understanding that Mr. Luter feels that if the farmer's market is not part of this project, where we are with it. So, February the 10th, questions and concerns to Michael. He'll distribute them to us. We'll get them to Mr. Luter, and we will discuss again at our next committee meeting on February 24th. Thank you, Mr. Luter. The second thing on the agenda under public buildings and welfare is the entrance corridor overlay and historic guidelines. And this was a carryover from our last town council meeting. Was it presented at town council meeting?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Tammy?
Did town council have any additional comments? The uploaded document was linked for the guidelines. There's just 2 remaining things with the historic district guidelines, updating the date to February 2025, and including the interactive clickable on the table of contents.
Has everybody had the opportunity to look at the handouts that were given to us, and do you have any questions of Tammy?
I have one.
Mike?
Just verbiage anyway, isn't that correct from last time when we reviewed?
Correct. There were
That's
just
right.
just
Okay.
minor.
Okay.
Nothing substantial.
Right, okay. That's how I saw it. It's a good read.
Still working on it.
If there are no additional questions or comments about the interest corridor overlay and the historic guidelines, we will forward this on for approval for town council. Number 3, the official zoning map. Tammy?
Yes, this is just our official zoning map that we have. We did update the original one. It didn't include the annex parcels. This one now has the newly acquired Molly Turner area and the Mallory Scott Farm included in the map.
So they were the only 2?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
And it was recommended for approval by the planning commission.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, we'll forward this to town council as well for approval. Any other topics for discussion on the public buildings and welfare?
Did a great job running that sector, I might add.
Thanks, Steve. If not, I'll close public buildings and welfare.
Any other questions today to council? If not, meeting adjourned.
Wow. Wow.